Hello everybody, welcome inside the Fantasy Hut for our second video podcast of the season. I'm the League Commissioner David Kiarsis. I'm joined here once again by League member Alex Mason. We're here to recap the first month of the season. It's been exciting. There's been some unexpected players and teams playing well and some unexpected players and teams not playing so well. What's kind of been the main thing that stood out to you so far?
Well, in terms of positions, I'll start at the quarterback position. The biggest surprise, I think, probably throughout the whole league is Phillip Rivers. Based on where he was drafted and the points he's putting up, number 3 quarterback in our league, not turning the ball over. He's just been a big surprise. Unfortunately, he's on one of the worst fantasy squads in the league, so I don't think he's going to help in terms of winning many games, but definitely the biggest surprise for players.
Yeah, I think that entire team playing as well as they have has been a big surprise for me. I did not expect that. I think one quarterback, and I'm pulling hairs here a little bit because I think any quarterback that was selected or kept to be a top 14 guy has performed pretty well. But I think Russell Wilson is a guy that we came into this season with high expectations for. Certainly, you owning him, you've had high expectations for him. He's going to be your guy for a long time. Yes. I think that in 4 games, he had the one big game against the Jaguars, but he's had 2 games under 13 points. 4 of his remaining 8 matchups include 4 teams that rank in the bottom 12 in points allowed to quarterbacks. Now, the points allowed to certain positions, I know it's a small sample size, 4 weeks. A lot of that can change. I don't know how much stock you want to put into that. But I think Russell Wilson is a guy that, and I certainly expect him to perform better, but they're not throwing the ball as much. They're a team that's so run-oriented, play to the strengths of their defenses. So I think he's a guy that hasn't been as great as we had thought, but could be better. A running back that actually I think that has been really, really great, especially for an undefeated team in our league, is Reggie Bush. A lot of people talked about how great a fit he was with the Detroit Lions, their explosive offense. He's been great. The 2 weeks he's been fully healthy, 30-plus points in both games, getting a lot of touches. I think assuming he stays healthy, he could put up top 5 numbers the rest of the way.
I think I would agree with you. I remember on draft day debating between taking him and who I actually took at my number 2, my second round position with Fitzgerald. I went with Fitzgerald instead of Bush, but he was who I was contemplating. I expected a big year, and I agree with you. Running back who disappoints is a member of probably the most disappointing franchise in all of football, actually. Maurice Jones-Drew, just not doing anything, getting the work, not doing anything with his touches. And the team he's on, soon to be champ, which is a name to be questioned anyway.
Well, he's actually on Sam D's.
You're right, he's on Sam D's. So anyway, part of the reason why I think that team is struggling to put up points is, he probably wasted a high draft pick on a player that's just not performing, and that's the most disappointing running back by far. Transitioning into wide receivers, someone who I think has been a surprise, sticking with the same team actually, is Cecil Shorts. I could go with something obvious, like Victor Cruz, who's been putting up huge numbers that we might not have expected. But Cecil Shorts no one really had him on the radar as a top 20 guy, and he has been producing as a must start every week. So that's why I think it's surprising, especially on a team with no quarterback, no offensive threats really anywhere else. The fact that this guy can remain startable is surprising to me.
Yeah, 25 points against Seattle, which is unexpected. The worst team in the league heading to Seattle played that kind of defense. So, a wide receiver who's been a little disappointing since his big week 1 is Vincent Jackson. He was an important player for Sam D's, one of his main keepers, 4th round pick. He had the huge week 1, but has done little since, culminating with his week 4 performance, 2 catches on 11 targets. And I don't know if it gets any better for him with Mike Glennon now at quarterback. Maybe they can figure some things out in the bye week, but Vincent Jackson, a guy that's extremely important to Sam D's, who's dealing with a number of injuries. Vincent Jackson had the small rib injury, so I think Vincent Jackson is a guy that is going to need to turn it around if Sam D's is going to get back on the winning track. Transition into tight end now, speaking of the same team with Sam D's, a guy I liked in the preseason was Jordan Cameron. There was some good reasons for why he could have a breakout season with North Turner as the offensive coordinator, but he's been a beast. he's had been taking away the Thursday night game where he didn't perform well. 3 straight games with double-digit points. Double-digit targets in 3 games. So he's been a big performer for Sam Dees, and obviously with some of the injuries he's dealing with, is going to need to continue to perform well to get Sam Dees off this current 2-game losing streak. It's
probably the best player Sam Dees has. Unfortunately.
Other than Aaron Rodgers, yeah, I think I would agree with that.
I
Yeah, because his team's really struggling.
Now, to a tight end that I'm just disappointed with is, Fred Davis. This guy was startable until he had his Achilles injury last year. Had his most productive week in week 1 with a whopping 4.2 fantasy points. That's just embarrassing. I can't believe someone like that would get drafted. I think he's produced 1.5 points since week 1. He's been active, produced 0 points last week. Just another reason why RG3-Way is struggling.
Yeah, he's just been non-existent. So transition a little bit from the players that we've seen and how they've performed on the field. We're going to talk a little bit about some teams in the league that have either performed well or not so well based on expectations. We talked a lot about draft day, making projections for teams. I put out a lot of stuff on the website, draft analysis, talking about teams that may have done well or not in the draft. Through 4 weeks, which team has stood out to you so far?
Also hard you. I don't know where the points are coming from. I don't know where the wins are coming from. I just look at some of the trades the guys made. I just don't get it. I don't think it's going to be something that is sustainable. I look at this wide receiving core. Torrey Smith's a big play guy. He's hit or miss. Same with Colston, especially on a team with so many mouths to feed. He's got Zach Stacy in his lineup this week. Ryan Broyles. I just don't know where the points come from. Obviously Drew Brees is a fantastic player, but if you look at up and down his team, there's no stars on this team. So that's just, I just don't understand where the wins are coming from. I think I've said that 4 times, but I just don't think any of it will last. And yeah. Yeah,
the trade that also hard you made to acquire Brees. You got Brees, Torrey Smith, and Darius Hayward-Bay for Victor Cruz, Chris Johnson, Tavon Austin, Carson Palmer. I didn't really know what to make of the trade when it happened. Thought really no team came out as a winner, but given our league, given the importance of quarterbacks, Brees has pretty much carried him to the 3-1 record.
Yeah, you're right, but I think you need to get points elsewhere, and if the Saints have a bad week, which let's face it, it's pretty unlikely with how dominant their offense is. I just don't know. I just don't know if one quarterback is what are you going to be dependent on 40 points a week from your quarterback? That's kind of unrealistic.
A team that has stood out maybe for different reasons is Sam Dees to me. Started 2-0, was a team after the draft that I thought drafted really well, was optimistic about its chances this season, thought maybe it was going to be his best team ever, but has now dropped 2 straight. Scored 100 points last week, which given the stat corrections, it was at 98, which would have been the first time a team has ever scored less than 100 points, given our current roster format, which was instituted in 2009. But 0-2 since, with scores of 122 and 100. Has been banged up with Stevie Johnson added to the injury list, got injured his back on Thursday. Jones-Drew has been banged up, underperformed. Alfred Morris now a little banged up. Eli Manning and that Giants offense has just looked awful. So I don't know how this team turns it around. It's just, and then not to mention Andre Johnson, who's been good, but obviously the knock on him is whether he can stay healthy. He's already dealt with a minor injury.
Tough matchup this week.
Yeah, so I don't know how he's going to be able to turn it around, but so that'll be interesting to see. He already kind of dug himself a little bit of a hole this week, only getting 10.5 points from Jordan Cameron and Stevie Johnson on Thursday night. So we'll have to see if he can somehow pull out a win against undefeated Ladarius Webb. So now, obviously, we love talking about our own teams. So why don't we do a little bit of that? The Cap Wilson Show, 3-1, off to a good start. First place in the Eastern Division. Give me some thoughts on your team and what you've seen from them so far.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I like my team a lot. The fact that I'm 3-1 is happy, especially with the last 2 years I've had to deal with. Even 3 years actually. It's been a struggle for me. And And what I'm really most happy about is I'm putting up consistent points without production at the quarterback position, which I think is on its way. I don't think many 10 and 12 point production days from Kaepernick and Wilson are gonna, I don't think that's gonna happen very many times. I have very dependable wide receivers. I'm getting exactly what I wanted from the running back position, which is about between 25 and 35 points a week. If I was able to get that, knowing how weak I am at the position, that was really what I was banking on. And Antonio Gates, man,
definitely Gates.
He's been great. He's had a revival, and he could be one of those difference makers. I remember on draft day thinking Eddie Lacy was going to be a difference maker for me if he could have a top 15 back year, but it's looking like Gates, if he can even keep up, near that top 5 tight end production, that's pretty good, because I know my wide receivers, they're studs. We can't lie, they're studs, and they're going to put up 15, 20 points a week. Every week, one of them is probably going to have a breakout 30-plus point game. So, knowing I have that, and if the production comes from the quarterbacks, I really, really like my team's chances.
Now, I haven't enjoyed as much success as you. One of my 3 losses was to you in week 3. I'm sitting at 1-3. Facing RG3 this week. If I lose, it'll be the second time ever I've been 1-4. I think my problem is, and it speaks to going back to Andre Johnson, is I think one thing that Ball So Hard You, Keith, does well is that no player is untradeable with him. We talk about how he gets rid of his keepers, and I think that's an advantage for him because he never overvalues a player. Now me, I do the opposite. I think in 2010 I took Andre Johnson #1 overall. Probably should have done that, but I love the guy, so I had to have him. I regretted the trade of Des Bryant in the offseason, and I came into this season obsessed with getting him back, and it kind of led to my trade for Brady, led to me trading Tom Brady, which, it's interesting, you and me in the draft day preview talked about how loaded your team was last year. What do our teams have in common, your team last year to this year? We both traded Tom Brady. So, but with that being said, I feel like I have an opportunity over the next month of the season to get back into it. I feel like I have a good chance of winning this week against RG Three-Way, and then I play some other 1-3 teams. There's 5 teams at 1-3, so it's really wide open. I love my core 7. It's just obviously now with Brady gone, it's going to come down to my quarterbacks. They're going to be risky plays every week. But I feel like if I can get 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is kind of a bare minimum for a quarterback in the NFL these days, that's 20 points. That's going to lead to some success for me. So, we'll see how it plays out. But like I said, 5 teams at 1-3, so anything can really happen. So with that, standings are kind of muddled. My first power rankings will be coming out next week, so I thought it'd be fun to give somebody else in the league a chance to rank our league. So that's what Alex is here to do. We're going to get power rankings from Alex and see what he thinks about how the league's shaping up so far.
So I'll start from the bottom. The bottom feeder of the league, I put Kamoli. Too dependent on the Patriots' offense, which I don't really think is going to become the high-flying 40-point-a-game offense that we've seen in the past. How do you expect Gronk to come back? Amendola's already been hurt. Brady has not been producing the way we've seen. The running game is struggling. It's just people are dropping like flies on that team, and his team basically essentially is what the Patriots do. Victor Cruz is really only real good player that I would say. So I put Kamoli at 10 in my power rankings. At number 9, I'm going to go with RG Three-Way. There's just question marks everywhere on this team. He's got Dez Bryant, Adrian Peterson as his top players, but nothing at flex. RG3 has been good, but only because they're getting blown out. I think last week they actually had a close game. They might have even won. I think it was one of RG3's lower production games of the year. Actually, no, you go back to Detroit, he only put up 12 points in week 3. But just the lack of points, the lack of depth. If it wasn't for Phillip Rivers, he probably wouldn't even have a win. So I'm putting him at number 9. I'm going to go with 40s at 8. I like the running back depth on this team. Ray Rice, LaShawn McCoy, those are good players. Top 5 running backs at the end of the year, most likely, assuming they can stay healthy. Rice already had a little bit of an injury, but I like that. He's a little weak at wide receiver, but he has guys that are getting targets, guys that are top options. Roddy White could come back and really improve his squad, and then Cam Newton. Cam Newton can win weeks for him, so that's why I have him at 8. At number 6, 7, gonna go with soon to be. I'm not gonna finish the rest of his name because it's incorrect. No second quarterback, no tight end, unreliable running backs, and his wide receivers are good. They're probably the second best trio of wide receivers. Maybe I'd put him with D. Butters and him after mine. Welker's a PPR monster, Marshall's a stud, and Josh Gordon, I won't lie, I'm really surprised with his production.
He's been good.
He's been really good. Even Brian Hartline, I think, is startable. Cecil Shorts, I mentioned earlier in the podcast. So good wide receivers for this team, but just no second quarterback. We know what that can mean for you in this league. Number 6, I'm going to go with Sam Dees, even after the horrendous output that he had last week. Arguably the top quarterback maybe it's not really arguable. Peyton Manning's the top quarterback, but the second best quarterback in the league, Aaron Rodgers. Also some decent wide receivers. Stevie Johnson injury hurts. Running backs are terrible, actually. Jones, Drew, and Mendenhall. Mendenhall might lose his job soon. Alfred Morris, I'm not sure you're going to get the same production we had last year. I think the 1-3 record speaks for itself. At number 5, I'm going to go with Ball So Hard U. This team has been balling. I'm not going to lie. It's putting up points. This is probably one of the stronger managers in the league. He has been for the existence of the league, I'd say. I hate to give him credit in public, but just a little weak at wide receiver. Percy Harvin coming back, who knows if he's startable come playoff time? Are you really going to take a risk starting a guy who's missed the whole season? But, he's not a bad team. He's solid. Doesn't seem to have any superstars anywhere, but, hey, he's winning games. That's all that matters. At number 4, I'm going to go with D. Butters, gentleman to my left right here. As he said, he likes his core 7. I think he likes it more than I do. His running backs are good. Foster and Lynch, those are some solid guys. Receivers, Green, Cobb, and Nelson. Nelson I'm a little iffy on. He's a little more, higher expectations for Jordy. I just think he's so touchdown dependent, not quite getting the targets that Cobb gets. But he also has struggles at that second quarterback position, which, I've said already, is very important.
Both, really.
Well, Jay Cutler, I think, has been pretty good. At number 3, this was kind of a toss-up for me. 2 and 3, but the two teams I have at 2 and 3 they're very interchangeable. Since they're my power rankings, I'm putting the Sorge at number 3. Best running backs in the league by far. The only problem is when you're running back dependent, you're one play away from your team just being crippled. And that's why I tend to favor wide receivers as opposed to running backs in fantasy, just because the wide receiver position as a whole, not as injury prone. They come back, they can still be productive, they can catch a touchdown pass, they can be used as a threat in the red zone. Running backs, once they get hurt, their production just falls off the cliff. But those running backs, Charles, Forte, Murray, it's pretty tough to compete with. Needs wide receivers, that's for sure, but he's got Stafford and Vic, 2 solid quarterbacks. As what I said, when someone struggles at that second quarterback position, him having 2 good ones really helps. I'll put the Cap Wilson Show, my own team, at number 2. Best wide receivers in the league by far, consistent points from them every week. Doesn't have to worry about at least putting up 170 to 180. Once those quarterbacks put up, we know they're talented. We saw what they can do last year. If they turn it around, this team's a force, I think. Not just because it's mine, just because I really like the talent. And then at number 1, it's tough to argue with a 4-0 record and the best 4 weeks in fantasy history probably for one player with Peyton Manning. It's just been unbelievable. 7 touchdown passes the first week and consistent 30-point player. Week 2 a little down against the Giants, but this team is just really good. Jimmy Graham is a monster. Reggie Bush, like we spoke about before, has been a great draft pick for him. Darren Sproles continues to catch passes, and the only thing that I'm nervous about with this team is it's really just those 3 players that drive it. So one bad week for the Broncos, one bad week for the Saints, probably means a bad week for Ladarius as well. Still a number 1 team in my rankings, though.
Yeah, keep a lookout for my power rankings next week. That'll be the first edition this season, and then we'll continue on with that throughout the year. So that's some quick hits for week 5, a big week. Like we've talked about, standings are real muddled. Half the league 1 and 3, so a big week. So Mason, we're gonna get your picks this week. D Butters, RG 3-way, 2 1 and 3 teams. D Butters has an early lead with the Cleveland D getting 22 points Thursday night. RG 3-way without Adrian Peterson and Robert Griffin on bye. D Butters important matchups. We talk about his quarterbacks: Bradford against Jacksonville, Cutler against New Orleans, and then that late Sunday night game, 4 players for Raiders, Chargers for RG 3-way, the 2 quarterbacks, Denarius Moore and Vincent Brown. Thoughts on this one?
Well, I know when I made my pick on the Yahoo Pick'em, I believe I went with RG 3-way. I'm gonna have to change my mind. I don't know if he plans on getting Peterson out of his lineup. I don't know what to expect from Pryor coming back from the concussion. I really don't like the matchups. I mean, Denarius Moore, Vincent Brown, I think those are weak flexes. I'm gonna have to switch my pick. I'm gonna go with D Butters. I think, and 22 points in the Browns defense on a Thursday night definitely helps.
Yeah, definitely a good start there. Next matchup, soon-to-be champ Ball So Hard U. Soon-to-be champs won 4 of the last 5. Beat him in the playoffs. 2 years ago. Ball So Hard's best start since 2007. Soon-to-be champ got 20 points from Josh Gordon, Brian Hoyer. Decided to bench C.J. Spiller on Thursday. Ball So Hard U got 22 from Willis McGahee and Scott Chandler. Thoughts on this one?
Well, honestly, I see a low-scoring matchup here. I don't really see anyone with a great matchup. I don't see anyone that's going to break out. I'm going to go with Ball So Hard U in this one. I don't like the running backs on the soon-to-be team. Wilson is just an unproven player. Richardson, I think he got 30 carries last week. He's averaging still in the 3 yards per carry range, going against a tough Seattle team this week too. But on the other side, Keith Ball So Hard U has to worry about Andrew Luck playing that same Seattle team. I just think the better day is ahead for Ball So Hard U.
Yeah, I think I originally thought soon-to-be champ was going to take this one, but the shaky Thursday night certainly hurt him. So I also think this is a huge week for David Wilson playing that Philadelphia defense. He needs to come through and have a big week.
If he doesn't do anything this week, then I think we know what we're dealing with him.
Big matchup here: the Swords and 40s. 40s actually beat the Swords in last year's semifinals. 40s got 11.4 points from Robert Woods. The Swords is without Antonio Brown on bye. Big matchup here is Vic versus McCoy in that Giants matchup. What you got here?
I'm gonna go with 40s. I think I picked Swords originally. Looking at it again, I don't like those wide receivers of Hopkins and Blackman. I don't see many points coming out of that. Kendall Wright, I don't see much coming from him with the backup quarterback playing this week. DeMarco Murray, I've never been a big fan of. Charles and Forte should put up their numbers, but I don't see big games for those players, the ones I mentioned. On the opposite end, Joe, 40s, Cam Newton against Arizona, good matchup. Edelman, we know he's going to catch his balls. McCoy and Rice, McCoy's going to have a monster day. He might be the #1 fantasy player of the week against that porous Giants defense. And, Steve Smith, T.Y. Hilton in the slot. Slot receivers have been pretty effective against Seattle, actually. I've been watching their games, paying attention to them. So I'm going to go with 40s in this one.
Then we're going to look at your matchup now. You're playing Kamoli this week. Kamoli real banged up without Ridley, without McFadden, without Gronkowski, might be without Amendola, which then he's going to have to go find a receiver on the wire. Thoughts on this one? You haven't beaten Kamoli since 2009.
I think that's going to end this week. Who does he have? You told me all the players he doesn't have. Does he even have a lineup to start?
True.
Tom Brady, we spoke about it before. He hasn't been that top guy that he's been in the past. Cincinnati's a tough defense also. Cruz is going to have a big day. Jeffrey, depending on Marshall's injury, we've got to keep an eye on that. Jeffrey could be in line for a big day. Amendola, even if he starts, I'm not really worried about him doing anything. The guy can't seem to stay healthy for 4 quarters. Running backs are just terrible, worse than even my running backs. Chris Johnson, I don't know what happened to this guy.
Remember when he was a good football player?
I do remember when he was a good football player. And then I traded for him, and he seemed to forget how to hit holes and run fast. Flexes are even worse. D'Angelo Williams, what are you going to get, 70, 80 yards? Arizona is one of the best run defenses, especially in the red zone in terms of allowing touchdowns. Tony Romo could be in line for a big day, probably be his best player, but I don't think it'll be enough to keep up with the wide receivers of the Cap Wilson show.
And then our final matchup of the week, undefeated Ladarius Webb's looking to become the 5th team to start at least 5-0. Just to throw this out there, the records for wins to start a season is 11-0. Ladarius Webb started 7-0 back in his 2009 title season. Slow start for Sam Dees with Stevie Johnson and Jordan Cameron only getting him 10.5 on Thursday. I think this is an easy pick.
Yeah, Ladarius Webb going to keep rolling. Don't really have much to say else. Sam Dees.
We'll have to look at the schedule down the road, and maybe the next time we're doing another podcast, Ladarius Webb will be. We'll have that first loss. We'll have to see. Everybody keeps getting stuck in the web. It's sticky in there. So thanks for joining us again on the Inside the Fantasy Hut video podcast. We'll hope you'll join us next time.
Peace out.